got a special guest with us tonight. It's Democratic candidate for the lieutenant governorship, Mike Collier. So is the show what you expected?
That's just fabulous. I love it.
All right, thank y'all for coming. I'll be honest, I haven't read your bio. I just know that you're running against Dan Patrick.
El Diablo.
I'm really excited. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've never held office. I just got angry enough to run one day. This is a true story. Well, I was a long time ago, but I saw the light. We had a mayor in Houston that I thought was fabulous. His name was Bill White. Remember Bill White? Yeah. I really admired him, and I could compare. Bill White was everything I was looking for in a political leader. He's smart, he's honest, he's hardworking, and then I compared him to Rick Perry. What can I say?
Their hair color is different.
No, but literally, I just got angry enough to run. I've always felt like politics would work better if you had a skill that you learned in the private sector, and then you offered it up for the public good. Do good work, be honest, don't stay too long, sort of thing. And I didn't know what I would do. I'm a CPA.
Yeah.
You know the difference between an introverted and an extroverted CPA?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Can I say it?
Yeah, you go. You go. This is your show.
Y'all know the difference between an introverted and an extrovert? Any CPAs in the audience? Okay. The introvert will look at his shoes while he talks to you, but the extrovert will look at your shoes while he talks to you. No, they made those cuts. They made those cuts to public education back in 2011. I was sitting in literally reading the newspaper, not paying any attention to Texas politics. Why would you, with Rick Perry in office? But I read that we were going to cut public education by $5.4 billion because we had a deficit, and I smelled a rat. Because we can't have a deficit. Our property taxes pays for schools. And so I knew something was terribly wrong, and so I followed it, and I thought, gee whiz, somebody's got to run against these guys. And nobody would run for comptroller. This was 4 years ago.
Right. Tell us what a comptroller is.
Well, I'm running for lieutenant governor now.
Right, and tell us what that is also.
The comptroller is the state's chief accountant and budget officer, and that's why we did those things that we did to public education. I'm passionate about public education. And Lieutenant Governor, by the way, and we'll come back to that, Lieutenant Governor is the president of the Senate. Lieutenant Governor arguably is the most powerful position in the state. And watching these guys a minute ago, who would want to be in charge of that operation? I do.
Yeah, you do.
So if you go back to the original impulse, so after I got furious that we cut public education and they lied about it basically, then I thought, well, what do? What does John Q. Citizen do when you feel this way? And I didn't know what I was going to do, but then I read in the newspaper that Suzanne Collier, who was the comptroller, was going to step down, and there were no Democrats going to run for that position. And there weren't any that ran in 2010. And I read in the newspaper nobody would do it because you can't win. And you can't win if you're a Democrat, so nobody would bet their political career. And I said, well, that's my cue. I don't have a political career. So I reckon I better do it. So I called the party, and then they kept me after. We didn't win, but they kept me going. And then it was about 18 months ago. They said, you ought to run against El Diablo, Dan Patrick. And I said, let me have it. Let me have it. So here's brings
That's a great spirit.
I know you're supposed to ask questions.
No, you're supposed to talk. I'm just here to prompt.
He's the worst lieutenant governor.
I'm just going to drink my water like Kavanaugh.
And all this talk about bathrooms.
You go.
Can I just say a word about bathrooms?
You can say 2 words.
If Dan Patrick is so worried about bathrooms, he would have banned Republican politicians from using them. Because more Republican politicians have been caught doing bad things in bathrooms than the whole transgender community. It's all about the data.
Yeah, hold on, waiting. How does an accountant stay out of debt?
Oh, that's a good one. If you can't afford it, finance it. That's what they say.
He learns to act his wage.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I can't keep up with you, Steph.
No, you can't. This is your show. This is your show. So I was going to ask you if you were asked to run. You weren't. You were inspired to run on your own. What happened after comptroller that did not break your spirits, and now you're super excited again?
Well,
what keeps you going?
Well,
That's
part of it is, you know, no Democrat ever runs twice, really. And it's a huge state. And, you know, you meet all these people, you make a bunch of mistakes, you build relationships, and then you lose, and your heart breaks, and say, well, that's it, I'm not going to do that again. And all that goes out the window. And I felt like I owed it to myself, and I felt like I owed it to the party, and I felt like I owed it to the state to keep going. Plus, the problems are getting worse. I mean, the things that we campaigned on in 2014 have gotten way worse. And so, you know, we have to do this. And the fundamental issue, in my opinion, is we don't have effective competition. So we're being run by one party, and they are off the rails. So my job is to get them back on the rails. Why am I not running for the Railroad Commission?
Okay, and nobody.
No.
Yes.
Dan Patrick, it didn't take me but 30 seconds to say yes.
Have you met Dan Patrick?
No. Well, he won't debate me.
No. Okay, so let's pretend we were debating Dan Patrick right now.
Oh, fabulous.
Okay, I'll be Dan Patrick.
Fabulous.
You be Mike Collier. Can we get a question from the audience? Yes, ma'am, on the front row.
Finance.
After the bathroom bill passed in North Carolina, there was a huge backlash, and I'm wondering if you're spreading that message to people that you meet on the campaign trail.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the bathroom bill is bad for so many reasons. First of all, it's just pure hate, is all it is. I mean, it's hateful. In terms of the impact, and so there's ain't going to be no bathroom bill on my watch. There's that kind of nonsense ain't going to happen. So not only is it hateful, I mean, it's really hateful. And I've had a number of mothers of transgender children come up to me, children in transition, and say just the mere fact that you're out there, you know, saying what you're saying about it, more Republican politicians have been caught doing bad things in bathrooms and so forth. They say it's made a huge difference to my son or my daughter because of what they're going through. I mean, it's a very hateful bill. But then when you think about what the business community sees, I mean, the business community is all about tolerance and all about diversity. That's who we are as business leaders, and they see this bathroom bill stuff. And then, listen, they say, we're not going to bring a Super Bowl to Texas. We're not going to bring our company to Texas.
Yeah.
We're not going to bring our employees to a place that treats people like that. So it's very, very bad for business. Very bad for business.
Well, Dan Patrick here. I just want to say that Texas is different. We've always been different. And when you're on the right path, you just keep going. Am I right? All right, next question.
Well, every time I see Dan Patrick, I feel sorry for that village out there that lost its idiot.
Dan Patrick used to be a radio show host,
Right.
and he did a vasectomy live on the air. So, what are you willing to do? So, how badly do you want the lieutenant governorship job? And I'm not suggesting.
I'll play my trumpet on TV. How's that?
Do you have your trumpet with you?
Quarterback of the band, the trumpet. Everybody knows that. Any trumpet players out there?
I think I'm supposed to ask you how often you oil your trumpet. I was told it wasn't sexual. Aaron.
Every chance I get, but I'm busy campaigning. Every chance I get.
So you play trumpet for UT. Why
Yeah.
trumpet?
What's the quarterback of the band?
You throw it?
No. No. I always thought it was cool that they would play sports before and after the halftime show. You know, just to get the crowd.
How'd you meet your wife?
So it was a blind date. It was a blind date. I had come back to UT to graduate school. And so a friend of mine said, well, when you get back, I want you to meet my roommate, my girlfriend's roommate, and her name is Suzanne. And for me, it was love at first sight. I mean, I can still remember, we were at Hyde Park Bar and Grill. Do you know Hyde Park Bar and Grill?
I do.
We're sitting out by the windows, you know, so you can see the street. If you're looking at the street, it was that windowed room on the left. I go there all the time. And she rounded the corner, and I took one look at her, and I was in love. Literally. And so I asked her, how did you feel? And she said, well, it took a while. I had a mustache, she didn't like it.
She didn't know you were
I had a sweater and a weight problem, the kind of sweater that a person with a weight problem shouldn't wear, and I was the last to know. So I lost weight, got rid of the sweater, shaved the mustache, and she said, I do. And that was 29 years ago. And I mean, we love each other. We just had our 29th anniversary in August, I was in El Paso campaigning, and she was home, and she called and she said, "Happy anniversary. This is one of our more pleasant anniversaries." No, I'll tell you one other thing about Suzanne. So I decided that I was going to take early retirement because I wanted to work on this public education problem.
Okay.
And, well, how do I tell her? So I just told her. I said, "Suzanne, sit down. I have news for you." "What?" "I'm going to take early retirement." She got this pained expression. "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to save public education in the state." And she said, "Is there travel involved?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Good, go. Knock yourself out," she said.
So I understand two important parts of your platform are property tax reform
Right.
and school finance.
Right.
So I want you to talk about it, but I want you to show me
Oh, terrific.
here on the abacus.
That's fabulous. Okay, well, on this abacus, and it's particularly important here in Austin where the property taxes are so difficult. In this abacus, so think of each of these beads as the taxes that you pay locally. And the way property taxes works is you send every bit of it to the state and you never see it again. And that's how that works. And it's
Do we carry the wand? Or, all right, thank you very much.
okay. No, we have a huge, I feel a little bit like Galileo. I read a book a long time ago called Galileo's Daughter. Did you ever read that book? That was a wonderful book. I didn't know much about Galileo until I read that book. And as I recall from the book, I don't claim to be a history expert, but what I remember from that book is that there was a rumor back then that the earth revolved around the sun. The church didn't like that, but there was a rumor that the earth revolved around the sun. And Galileo had a telescope and did the math, and he said, "Look, I've proven it. The earth revolved around the sun." They threw him in jail. So I sort of feel like the Galileo of Texas. Republicans have been raising our property taxes, and they've been lying about it. No, they don't. Republicans don't raise taxes. Yes, they do, and I'm showing people, and I sort of feel a little bit like Galileo. I'll either land in jail or in office.
Well, for some people, it's the same thing. Why, being serious, why are people not hearing your message, and why do they not understand that Republicans are raising property taxes?
Well, I'll tell you what, they've been doing this for a long time. And without getting into too much detail, property values always go up, which means that property taxes always go up. So the legislature sits back and says slyly, well, if this much more money is coming in from local property taxes, here's how much less we'll put in from the state. Nobody will know the difference. And then it gives them a surplus, which they can hand out to the large corporations. Now, I saw this when I ran for comptroller. I did my best to explain this to folks. We came up short. I'm still fighting it. But Dan Patrick did exactly what I thought he would do. He shows up in Austin at the beginning of his term, and he looks at the state's books, and he sees a surplus. We didn't have a surplus. That was our money. We've been overtaxed as property owners. And he sees a surplus. Now, he has the choice. Well, I got a surplus, so what am I going to do with it? Well, if you're a reasonable person, you'd give it back to the people who paid it, I think, which is us. But instead, they cut the big corporate margin tax and handed every penny of that surplus to the big corporations. And I happen to be a big corporate guy, so I know how the game is played. I'm a corporate accountant. I know where all the bodies are buried.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about
And this is not right. It's not right.
Where would I hide money?
Now, you know I got to be careful. I'm running for office.
Yeah.
This is being recorded, so I got to be careful.
Tell me what a day in the life of Lieutenant Governor Mike Collier would look like, and are you hiring? Asking for a friend. His name rhymes with Methany.
Well, I would say, first of all, the door is open to ordinary Texans, not just donors and big corporations. All of us. No, listen, it's very simple. I mean, I suppose I can't call myself a non-politician in a few short weeks. I mean, I'm working to win this election. I plan to win this election. And when I win the election, I can no longer say I'm not a politician. But I'm not a politician. I don't view it that way. I don't think that I will. Once I'm in office, there's about 5 or 6 very specific things that need to get done that's going to make the state better. And, the good news is, this isn't just, Democrats versus Republicans, because the vast majority of Texans see it this way. Great public education, because vouchers are a terrible idea, and we all know it. We got to fix property taxes, because it's going up too fast for homeowners, and I plan to do that. We ought to expand Medicaid. We should have done that a long time ago. We need absolute protection for Texans with pre-existing conditions. And we need to kill gerrymandering because gerrymandering is killing democracy. That's it. Do those 5 things, and it'll change the state forever. Particularly the gerrymandering one. Because I think gerrymandering is the root cause of all of our problems in politics. And I think democracy's dying.
I think Jerry's getting a bad rap.
Jerry's a bad dude.
He's a
Jerry's a
bad
bad dude. Jerry's a bad dude. And but I'll say one last thing.
Okay.
I mean, we saw the events in Washington. I don't even want to talk about it. Our hearts are broken. But I lay the blame at the feet of gerrymandering because it forces the parties to fight instead of compromise. And so when we kill gerrymandering in Texas, not because a court told us to, but because we have the wisdom to do it, then the other states will follow. A few states have already done it already. We'll do it next. Texas is huge, consequential. The rest of the states will follow. And then we in Texas are going to save democracy. And I want to say one last thing. I hope to get elected on November 6th. I hope you all will help me.
Yeah.
And thank you. And then, you know what? I'm going to call Mom. So my very first conversation is going to be to Mom. Who, when I got into politics, I said, Mom, I'm going to run for office. And she said, oh, don't do that. Oh, no, I raised you to be a nice boy. You're also unkind. Don't do it. And I said, Mom, I'll be very kind and be very sweet. And I saw her last weekend. She said, hit him again. You've got to win. No. My very first phone call is going to be to Mom.
Second?
And of course, Dad. And and I'll have to find Suzanne wherever she is and call her. No, I think she. No, and on November 7th, I'm going to call Donald J. Trump. And I'm going to let him know that there's 38 electoral votes in Texas that want a different answer out of it, boy. And that's going to change things a lot. Like separating families from the border.
Yes.
And we've got a real issue with racism, which is just breaking my heart when I think about all the reasons why I'm unhappy with politics. And I said this the other day. I'm old enough to remember the 60s and how awful it was. And you'd like to think that we were making progress in that regard, even to the extent that we had an African American as president, which you think is wonderful. Look at the progress we're making. But 2 things, we aren't making as much progress as we think. And you ask folks, for example, in the African American community and the need for criminal justice, we aren't making anywhere near as much progress as we think. We have to keep on it. And then when Trump got elected, that was several steps backwards to a place where it's very frightening. So me and Donald will have that conversation if he's there on the 7th.
You brought up DC, so let's talk about Kavanaugh and the
Okay.
Me Too movement, the sexual assault and sexual harassment problem we have here in Texas. What's your plan?
So the Kavanaugh thing, like I said, it just breaks my heart, and that would not have happened, any of it, if politics hadn't been so divisive, hadn't become so divisive. You have 2 parties that they're both too big to fail, and they exist to destroy each other. And values and the things that we cherish are just being crushed. And so I say that that's all about gerrymandering. So we have to fix that. Second, with the Supreme Court that's shifting hard to the right in favor of states' rights, well, then we better elect the right leaders for our state, because we're not going to be able to count on them to protect our rights. We're going to have to protect our own rights. So that's very important. And then this sexual harassment situation, what the Schwartner situation has caught all of our attention. It caused me to study what I hadn't studied prior to, with the help of members of my staff. And what I have realized, what many people have realized, is that we have a real problem, systemic problem with sexual harassment.
Yes.
Under the pink dome.
Yes.
And so you take somebody from the corporate world. I mean, we've been dealing with this for a long time, certainly not without flaw, so I'm not going to say that we always get it right, but we've been working at it. Right, so Mad Men is the way it used to be, and we have been working in the corporate world very, very hard to not do that. It has to do with the quality of the corporate cultures that we want. It has to do with the quality of the companies and attracting the best and the brightest, which is our desire. But we've worked hard to learn how to make such things as sexual harassment go away so you have an inclusive environment. And I don't see that any of the folks in the Capitol now in leadership positions have that experience or have the passion to do so. So it'll be a whole new world when I'm Lieutenant Governor, I can tell you that.
Sounds great. Great. I have some other candidates here that I'd like to bring out if you don't mind.
Oh,
right
bueno,
before
that's
that,
good.
one more accountant joke for you.
Yes.
What do accountants suffer from that ordinary people don't?
What?
I don't know.
Depreciation. All right, other candidates, please come on out. Let's welcome them to the stage. All right. I'm sorry, I don't recognize either one of you. Do you mind introducing yourself and what you're running for?
Yes, my name is Donathan Evergreen. I like to hang out in between 360 and Mopac. That's generally where I hide out. I don't come out very often, but when I do, I'm a sight to behold. I'm a naturist at heart, and I really just want to say I'm excited to go out and show the world everything that we can do to make Texas a wonderful state it is.
Okay, and what are you running for?
Whatever's available, really. I'm not sure. I don't want to step on any toes or anything because that does hurt, but I'm willing to, whatever position is available, I'll step right up.
All right, thank you very much. And our next candidate.
Hello. I'm running for lieutenant governor as well.
Oh, an independent, I see.
No, I'm with the furry evangelical party. My name is Cheetah. Been in a long-term relationship with Ostrich.
Beautiful, really.
It is beautiful.
Beautiful relationship.
It is beautiful. And we're fighting for all the rights of furries. We think that everyone, furry or not, needs to have a little scritching every day. And plushies need to be made in America.
All right, great. Well, let me ask you just a couple of questions. What would you say to galvanize voters to show up on election day? And first
Well, just
question
look
to
at
you.
what happens when you don't vote. It's bad. What we've got is bad, and we can make change.
Now, the word galvanized reminds me of this wonderful little pail that was out by a pond, and it really just kind of spoke to my youth. I'm sorry, I'm just getting comfy. It really spoke to my youth that, just follow your dreams. So if there's any galvanized people or buckets, follow your dreams, do what you need to do to get there. And that's really all I have to say about that.
Thank you very much. Chia.
Well, when I think of galvanized, I really think of the large tubs that we use. We drink from them, we wash in them. It is such a happy space for everyone together. I know Ostrich has taken a great deal of time to get the right galvanized tubs. And I think that if we had more galvanized tubs at all polling stations, that more and more people would come because they are so refreshing.
I really like what you're saying.
Thank you.
We already answered this, but I want you to say again. Why are you running for office?
Well, we got a lot of problems we got to solve. I think if we had more accountants in office, we'd have a lot fewer problems in office.
They might be more accountable.
Might be more accountable.
Thank you, naturalist.
Naturist.
Naturist. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say the reason I'm voting, there are a lot of social constructs and a lot of things just keeping us just in. And I just want to be open and just want to show everybody openness. It's really sad the time we're living in. So I'm just bringing us to happier times. You understand, Cheetah?
Do you understand? I do. You're kind of furry. Well, with the evangelical furry party, we have a real concern. In the gay community, they've co-opted some of our names. We are the bears. We are the seal. We are the beavers. We are these, and they've co-opted that. That has to stop. I think it's important to understand that Jesus was a furry. He came back and people didn't recognize him. They didn't include it. I mean, it's in the Apocrypha, but St. Jerome, you know, when he cut out various books, he took out the part where he was dressed as his favorite dog. The dogs of Palestine have always been known to be very important to the gospel, but Jerome took it out because he was not into furries. So we're working very hard to reclaim our names. Remember that when you hear bear, beaver, seal, any of those, that we're the real, and we feel oppressed because they're getting...
Roar it loud and proud, sister.
We're the beaver, we're the bear! Thank you.
I could get into that.
A little script is good for everyone.
What's a life lesson you carry with you, and where did it come from?
Wow, where do you start? How many life lessons do I have?
Your most recent one.
Oh, I think the number one life lesson is just that, I have sons. Suzanne and I have sons, and all the things you experience from the day they're born, and one of whom is here tonight. Michael's here. Oh, no.
Did you hear him?
No. Oh, no, there's Michael. He said, whatever you do, don't do it. Stand up. There's my son.
Kind of furry too.
All right, naturalist, naturist.
We really got to get it together, Stephanie.
Not right now.
No? Okay. All right.
Okay now.
Well, for me, I think a time... What was the question?
A learning moment for you in your life, and kind of what was it and why?
I was lakeside, and a comet went shooting by, and it kind of told me, hey, if I'm a comet and I can do it, so can you. And I'm gonna burn bright. I'm just gonna keep going, and I'm gonna keep burning until I just can't burn anymore.
That's kind of beautiful.
Thank you, that's what I'm here for.
A life lesson. It happened when I was 4, and I was watching Bugs Bunny when I had strep throat, and my fever had gotten very high, and my mother called the minister to come over, and while he was praying, Bugs Bunny was, and it merged together, and at that moment there was this vision, and I realized that Jesus was calling me to furrydom, and that if Jesus would call me as a 4-year-old, that I could call all of you as a 56-year-old, and it will be wonderful.
Wow, well look at that. We seem to be out of time.
We can keep going.
Yeah, so I wish we could. I'm getting it in my earbud.
We'll have pamphlets.
We'll have pamphlets, yeah. So, final question. In one word, why should Texans vote for you?
Strategery.
Openness.
Daily tummy scritches.
All right, thank you to our special guest.